bottomry. Now, this is, most of you by now already know that the United States is not a country, that it's a private corporation, a maritime corporation, uh, specifically operating or administered from Davos, Switzerland, etc., and is essentially a record keeper and more like a central hub for multiple hybrid European corporations, mainly of Europe, etc. Now, this is bottomry. Bottomry in maritime law is a contract by which the owner of a ship borrows for the use, the equipment, or the repair of the vessel, and for a definite term, and pledges the ship or the keel or the bottom of the ship, pars pro toto. So write that down, PARSPROTOTO, pars pro toto, as security. Now keep in mind all of the human trafficking instruments that they create in disguise of what you call shipping, and how they will do the semantics of dealing with the water of the womb and then the water of the bays and the ships, etc., and docking relative to claiming bodies of the offspring of women under the marriage codes, etc., initiated by the Popes of Rome and generally regulated by the Daughters of American Revolution. So keep that in mind. The licenses for marriage is regulated by the Daughters of American Revolution on behalf of the Doctrine of Discovery Popes of Rome. So continue to read bottomry. So the bottomry is being stipulated that if the ship be lost in the specified voyage or during the limited time by any of the perils enumerated, the lender shall lose his money, etc. And so the bottomry is essentially a contract by which a ship or a freightage is hypothecated and as surety for a loan, which is to be repaid only in case the ship survives a particular risk, voyage, or period, as Civil Code, California, 3017. Now, the contract is usually in the form of a bond. Now see how the bond, that contract? Now, most people, when they do, or when they deal with the United States Corporation Company subsidiaries, usually referred to as states of, etc., keep in mind and look at the correlations of the time period too, Dr. G. Mm-hmm. The Board of Trustees administrators via the United States Corporation Company Congress initiated the formality of the marriage license 1913. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Now, most people's concept is that it's more ancient than that, isn't it? Now,
you would think it's something that, yeah.
And which shows that most people aren't aware of things that they do every day because they assume it to be one thing and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not aware that the marriage certificate is a bond, actually. And the bond is against the cargo, which is you. You know, like when they always teach the narrative history of them bringing people as slaves on ships. They're really talking about maritime law, not actual ships. They're talking about bottomry. Mm-hmm. You know, the same way, like when they talk about this is the reason why, for instance, like when they have taught in the school books the narratives of people being brought as slaves, stacked 3 stories high in the hulls of ships chained together, and etc. Mm-hmm. That's the image, but the real deal is the bondage is really the paperwork. And the shipping is really bottomry. And the bottomry is really contracts of bonds on any instrumentality that they create to back their loans. You know, like when you look at the two executive orders that um, um, Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued in the 30s, right? Relative to refinancing United States Corporation Company, and they used the birth certificates. The reason why that was done is because they had fractionalized the marriage certificates to such a degree that they were worthless. Because remember, all the instrumentality is fiat.
So yeah, so just so those that may not know, when you're saying fractionalized, you mean they had parceled it out to so many different, one marriage license may have been, in 1,000 different hands, as far as a
Yes.
instrument.
Now remember, when anyone does research on a Cusick number, and you discover that companies around the world have allonges on the social security number that's assigned to you or another person, because remember, it's not yours.
Absolutely.
It's assigned to you, but it is not yours.
Absolutely.
All right, so we got to when we make reference to them, we want to make sure that we always take a non-possessive position when we state. Don't say my license or my.
Maybe say the license or theirs.
Their license number assigned to the bond against the straw against my estate. Like that, it's wordy, but that way you don't take possession, or you don't claim the obligation. See, because when you say it's mine, then you're standing as surety. Okay. And this is back to people not understanding the bond system. So they'll teach people constantly that the bondage is a chain, around people's legs and arms, and that they're bound, and that's bondage. And the real bondage has been the paperwork and the claims, and all of these instrumentalities. Keep in mind, come under the doctrine of discovery. So even when people are talking about the doctrine of discovery as a political venue, etc., or legal venue, as the Pope was talking about, their concepts are usually limited to what their idea of them colonizing and then claiming. Now, all bottomry instruments or any instrumentality coming from the corporate state applying to the people in any format, doesn't matter what it is, any form of license, any form of permit, which is still a license, or any form of certificate is a bottomry instrument, bar none. Now, and this is where, it's unfortunate that people aren't made aware of this, because their concepts, they go about their lives doing other things in their lives, in their mind, making a living, as you say, generating their labors to get a compensation in order to feed their families and to live, etc. And it's always a bill. Now, and keep in mind, the bills themselves are bottomry instruments. This is another part of the reality, but not taught, where people have not been made aware that when the corporations operating under the United States Corporation Company sends a bill, that the bill is actually a coupon. Mm-hmm. Now, I know you're aware of that. You've heard that, right?
Of course. Yes.
Yes. And so keep in mind, because the debt actually belongs to the United States Corporation Company and not to you. And this is where people need to have a comprehension that the instrumentalities that they're sending you, etc., that imply the debt, all of them are bills of lading and shipping instruments. All of them are bottomry instruments. And it would be well that in the future, like we'll do a little bit of writing on it and make a couple of articles and post it, because people really need to comprehend that these instrumentalities that they're using every day are actually trade instruments. All of them are trade instruments. And so they make bid bonds on them. They make bonds, surety bonds, bid bonds on all those instrumentalities. And this is why, for instance, like most people, when they're making references to any of these instrumentalities, it never dawns on them the series of allonges that are attached to them. And a series of allonges is no different, to keep it simple. Like say if you're operating a second a second or third person checking account, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a record on the checks that were written against that account, when they were cashed, who cashed them. In any transaction related to any bond system, those instruments will be called allonges. Whenever you see, when you do any research on the CUSIC number, that they're assigned to the man of straw, that they assigned to people under the 14th Amendment in order to regulate these bonds,
Mm-hmm.
on 55 Water Street, etc. Like when you do the research and you put that number in and you start seeing whether people are physically living or physically dead, you see they're still operative.
Yeah, with the well, not even the CUSIC, but the Social Security number itself without the dashes.
Yeah.
You can find that. And
all right,
I have an example because I've seen it on my mother.
And how like a lot of people say, they're using what on the surface what we would consider common sense reasoning, and just like when you looked up the number assigned to your mother,
mm-hmm.
right? And you said, how could they be still using the number when she's dead?
Yeah.
And this is back to the naivety that we have, because we keep forgetting, or the most people are not in the mindset that the United States is a human trafficking venue. It deals with the dead. So whether the physical is dead or whether the physical is alive, that's why they declare the people dead at sea. And see, so you see the C is SEE and SEA, i.e. maritime law,
mm-hmm.
and docking. This is why, like when you look at the black codes, Christian black codes, you will see where the determination of the release of the child, if the child is in hospital, and you'll see the staff of the hospital would determine with the state the release of the child or not.
Right.
And when you see them always coercing and intimidating women to sign birth certificates, there's bill of lading, because it's a maritime institution. And this is just like people don't know that hospitals are maritime.
Yeah, when we see birth, they give it to us with the BI, but for them it's really the BEA.
Exactly.
Like the birth that is in maritime transactions.
And then you already know.
Yeah.
You already know that grammatically the vowels are interchangeable.
Right.
A-E-I-O-U is sometimes you know how they say that.
Right.
And then you look at 1929. Now keep in mind 1913, and keep in mind that's also when they culminated. This was after earlier years of culmination of them genociding the Aboriginals off Jekyll Island and stealing their gold and murdering the people, and they set up their operations on Jekyll Island.
Yeah, may I just interject for a minute before you go too far from that? Just when you look up birth with the BERTH instead of the BI, the interesting thing also as a verb. Well, first as a noun, it's a ship's allotted place at a wharf or dock. The vessel had left its berth, right?
Yes.
That's an example. But as a verb, it means more.
Mm-hmm.
Or ship.
Mm-hmm.
A ship in its allotted place. These modern ships can almost berth themselves.
Yes.
So
and they call it mooring the ship.
Yeah. So there you, and it's interesting that a lot of this stuff applies or has been applied
sailing to everything. Because why? We were the sailors of the seven seas, and this is why that becomes what you call a verb, actually in its nature, used relative to shipping. Now, and when you comprehend the operations of them taking over they would deal with what you call the semantics. And this is back to where, again, why they don't teach grammatication to our people, so our people don't recognize that many words in the English language have to do with commercial operations, because it's an international commercial trade linguistic.
Does what's going on now behind the scenes with the change of the U.S. Fiat dollar as the gold standard and countries
No,
now?
it's never the gold standard.
Well, but the
no,
oil,
no,
the oil.
you call it the reserve.
The reserve currency.
Yes. Yeah.
With the change in that,
yes.
How would this affect what they've been doing all along? Because we know that the value is valueless outside of these.
All right. Now,
will there be a change? Will there,
yeah.
or is this
well,
new?
This is what the gradual change is. So you've got to keep in mind, it's not particularly related, but it's not. It gains no power relative to its relationship to the gold, if you get the point.
Okay.
Now, its lack of relationship to the gold is fraud on top of the fraud for theft purposes. In other words, that's the weaponization. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Part of weaponization is the fact that it is a fiat and not backed by gold. But keep in mind, lawfully, it must be backed by gold.
Okay.
All right. Now, unlawfully, or what you call de facto, it is backed by fiat. And fiat is not, it's a classification of what you call counterfeit fiat, or because you can't call it money, because if it's not, it's sort of like you can't say woman's almost pregnant. You can say it, but she either is or she ain't.
Yeah.
And so counterfeit, just like color, in other words, color is lawless, but color is description of things presented as law but are not law. But that's a word created to describe non-money. So fiat is non-money. So they'll say counterfeit money, but that's kind of, you can't kind of say that really. You can just say it's counterfeit. You know what I mean? So the deal of it is, when you look at Article 1, Section 10, Constitution for the United States, none of the states, part of the Union, can coin anything but gold or silver coin for payment of debt. That is the lawful money.
Now, isn't there? I heard there was about 23 states now that were going back to the gold standard. So that means that they're going back constitutional.
Yes.
I would assume, in light probably even of what's going on with the fiat currency. I would think.
Well, the monster of corruption is so deep and so big. Logically, it can't happen overnight. Because things will collapse like anything else. Not unlike a junkie, if you get the point. But the deal of it is, many of them are trying to get ahead of history, and also recognizing that as the world changes, at the pace it's changing, they will be so far behind if they don't, that they will simply totally collapse, as well as being hung for treason. So a lot of these things that they're doing is not because they've come to some moral sensitivity or moral reasoning, is that the momentum of the world's nation states that they trade with. You understand? The future determines. Meaning, just like when we're riding down 202, and we were mentioning Sears, and we rode through the empty lot, big beautiful building, lot empty type thing, and how people, some younger people, you say Sears, and they say, "What you talking about?"
Yeah, what's Sears?
Yeah. And the deal of it is that they know that if they don't make the change, and of course the diehards are the last to do, if you get the point, because they recognize that when they don't have control of the currency. Keep in mind, the currency is not money. It is the velocity of the movement of the voucher instruments. And so we have to start making these things more clear to people so they.
Let's talk about the Federal Reserve, for instance.
Yes.
Which has what seems to denote, but it's connotated when they say Federal Reserve because it's not even a public entity.
Exactly.
If I'm correct. And so they are dictating interest rates of how much we would pay for this and how much, right. They're, in other words, they're robbing us through
of course.
This artificial inflation.
That would be called inflation.
Yeah.
Now, even as you're, presenting just in this conversation, the inflation issue,
mm-hmm.
people need to comprehend that the inflation issue comes with fiat. It doesn't arrive by any circumstance. It comes with it by virtue of its design from its beginning. It is not unlike, like say for instance, like when you hear trade people around the world or nation states that have traded, and they're starting to talk about inflation. People think that some people think that that's some political or economic circumstance that has just arrived when it came about with the fiat.
In other words, it was built into the fraudulent
nature
design
of its existence.
They had to have a way to get more.
No, yes and no. Yes and no. You're right, but let's look. This is what must be understood, comprehended. That inflation comes by default with the nature of the existence of fiat, not as some necessarily political move that is made here and there. It can be done, instituted or activated or what you call accelerated, but it by its nature automatically comes about. This is how and why it's become necessary for the nations of the world to come to the point of not accepting it. Why? Because they've already been for years being robbed by accepting it. And many of them, to protect themselves, started creating fiat in order to trade, to slow down the capacity of the board of directors of the Circle Church and Chancery of robbing them completely in short term. And so this is why, like when you see, particularly since the Second World War, how the board of directors had, and we're talking about the board of directors, we're talking about people refer to them as Congress and
Senators, yeah,
right? Commanded that the different nation states send their gold to them in order to back up the trade, but really they stole the gold. If you get the whole point, and this is where you see in the background politics when people do any research in House journals or congressional records. And in recent years, with Germany commanding their gold back, so you already know about the fiasco that happened with those buildings
in September 11. Yeah.
Yeah. So why? Because what has been happening, even though say Germany was direct like number one allies with the United States Corporation Company, because you got to remember they're all connected. All right, and Germany and France, etc. Franciscan Brotherhood. But for the world, there's a political jurisdictional separation. But in the greater scheme of things, this is why when you start talking about their alliances, they'll talk about Western nations or Occidental nations, etc. Alliances, because connectedly in the background or the cover, they all belong to the bishopric. You see, but for the control of the narrative with the people at large, they must promote that they're separate nation state jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. And this is why you will see when you're looking at things from a regional perspective, and you would say, well, why would the United States? Because remember when people would make statements like that, why would the United States, as an example, go into Ukraine? like they'll say that. Why are when the cities are falling apart here, where they send billions and billions and billions and billions of notes to Ukraine at a time like this, when malls are closing, people are losing jobs, they got heavy drug problems in all your major cities, etc. Uh, but the people don't understand the political jurisdictions of the reality that the border lines, the jurisdictional border lines that are narrated to the general public don't actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
They only exist for the public's controlled narrative. And this is back to where it's difficult for people to comprehend bottomry instruments when they're in their mind thinking that, say, a marriage certificate is an honorable pledge between man and woman before the face of God in honor of loyalty and monogamy and, death do us part, and, your peanut butter sandwich, my peanut butter sandwich, and stuff like that, right? And reality is there are bonds.
Right, because you said until 19.
Now remember,
was it
1913?
It didn't exist. You would just write it in the Bible, family Bible, or they would make or they would just come together.
And you'll notice that even when they start talking about
unions,
exactly, they're matrimony.
Matrimony, yeah.
Matrimony, then they become like marriage. Now you got to look at the structure of the word Mars, and
rage.
And then the ninth letter I. And rage.
Yeah.
Now, and you notice that whenever there's an issue in marriage, it immediately goes to probate. And so people need to comprehend or know. So write probate down. We won't go into this right now, but write that down, you all, so that you can keep this in mind. Because we're having these conversations because a lot of people are going to have to start taking action on their own.
I think, though, is if we're knowledgeable about what it is that we have been allowed ourselves to be subjected to, when we have to stand up against it, we can stand up competently.
But you won't if you don't know what it is.
If you don't know what it is, right?
And just like, for instance, like these things, and we've talked about these things here and there, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, because it's a re-erudition. Okay. You working your work life, right? Mm-hmm. And operating under the assumption that you own this house because you, in your mind, have paid for it. Both things, statements are incorrect. You didn't pay for it, right?
You couldn't.
Now, but yet you're presented as if you did. Mm-hmm. But then if they tell you the truth, then they will tell you that what you've done, you put your labor into this estate, and they stole your labor by giving you fiat, making you think you were paid, and then taxing it to make sure that you would not be able to, what you would call, actualize real value in the voucher system. This is what the tithing or the taxes is about, and they do it on multiple levels. And what you're simply doing is what you call circular rotation feedback. And this is why, like, people can work, multiple jobs most of their lives, and always, even when they think they're doing well, are a few checks off the street. Mm-hmm. No matter how but they don't understand it because they've been trained in bottomry instrumentality, and not knowing that it is, or even what it is, or how it functions.
And you know what comes to mind as you're saying this and bringing this up to me is how we've played, for as long as I've known, the game of Monopoly, and they put things in our face. Mm-hmm. The game of Monopoly is you can land on this and buy this, you can become bankrupt, you can do this, but they were kind of telling you, I believe I read something about that game being created as
they're telling you how the United States
telling you how things work, and we never knew until now, for me, let me speak for myself. Yeah. So I never knew until in recent years that what I had in my pocket, mm-hmm. that I thought was money, and in my mm-hmm. bank account and I thought was money, is basically monopoly money.
Not even monopoly money, it's monopoly fiat.
Monopoly fiat, and that the ones who issued it have the right to devalue it at will, and to and to take it away or whatever. It's like it's not
Now,
like it's like you
look
said,
at
it's
what you
not
just
mine.
identified.
Right.
And where most people don't even think. People will say that and don't even think that as soon as you said that you're telling the truth, but look at what you're actually displaying. And I'll show you how people don't pay attention. Explaining what occurs, you're really saying the truth. What is the truth? If why can they inflate it? Because it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you. Now, so you're operating, when I say you were talking a plural you, or operating still with the mental concept that you own it, that you worked for it.
Because that's what they tell you.
Yeah, they told you that. However, this is why they don't want people thinking. See, because what it is, it's simply a bookkeeping system. Now, also, I want you all to write this down: double stock trust. Now, and we won't talk about it right now, but this is important for your research and for your comprehension in the conversations that we've been having. The board of directors, Congress, and Senate for the United States Corporation Company operated from Davos, Switzerland, with political jurisdiction, civil jurisdiction operating on the land at North America. See how wordy that is? Well, guess what if you don't say that? If you don't say that, you're lying. And not failure to say it leaves that gray area why most people don't understand the politics. But yet most people in a conversation would be trying to find a way not to say what I said. Well, you don't gotta say all that. Make it short. And guess what? The knowledge is lost. Which is again why it's hard, because people don't know that that abbreviation is a linguistic weapon. But of course, unless they know animal husbandry, they don't suspect it. And it's back to, as we were talking in the car, people have been trained from childhood that government is moral, under the parentis principle, like your parent doing things to help you, etc. When actually they are the doctrine of discovery operatives. No different than even like say for instance they taught the people in schools, right? The hybrid European colonists, right? And they said it, right? And yet turn around and in the second sentence say that they're the Americans, and the people don't contest it. But they say it, continue to say it until the people themselves start saying it. Then it becomes a political reality, not a truth.
Right. I want to go and grab some of the questions that are there. I've been highlighting, but this is a newer one. But because it, let me just look at. Let me just get paper.
Help me out.
The paper on is not here. This one said, address this.
Yeah.
Just did my tax. I'm just read the sentence. Comment. Just did my taxes and was asked to pay back over $1,000. How would you respond to that?
Yes.
Because it was
listen. Like when we're talking about, keep this in mind. Under animal husbandry, unbeknownst to you, you structured that question.
Yeah. Put it back up.
It's a combination. Yeah. It's a combination of a question and a statement that you just made, right? And this is my response to you. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I was going to talk about actually earlier, but we'll talk about it in the future. This is what I want you to look. I want you to look this up first. A Supreme Court Tax Act, I think, is 1909. That's number one. That's in my Confused About Taxes book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what I want you to start saying to yourself and in the future. Never refer to those tithes as my tax. One of the things that you want to start getting out of your language is the possessive of any of these instrumentalities issued to you, or any of these liabilities, because that's a maritime liability that's been pushed on you. Are we clear? Now, I wish we were actually being able to talk back and forth. But keep if you filed a tax form, the tax form, and write this down, is a voluntary power of attorney implied as mandatory. I repeat, it is a voluntary transfer of power of attorney to the foreign corporate operatives with the implied pressure of being mandatory. And keep this in mind.